Hello, welcome to the Business Etiquette webinar. My name is Lisa Rubini LaForest, and I will be your technical producer and moderator this evening. This webinar will be presented by Dana Booth. Our goal is to introduce you to business etiquette. Before we start the presentation, let's take a moment to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the webinar control panel. On the right side of your screen, you will see the attendee control panel, and on the left is the webinar viewer window. This viewer window will display the presenter screen when the webinar begins. The control panel can be minimized or expanded by clicking the horizontal double arrow button in the upper left corner. Minimizing the panel allows for a better view of the presentation. Take a moment to practice. There are a few features of the control panel that the attendees should know. First, be familiar with the Raise Your Hand button. This button is located along the left side of the control panel. It allows you to virtually raise your hand if you have a question or if you want to respond to a question being asked by the presenter. Find this button and click it now. Excellent! Now click again to lower your hand. Another important feature of the control panel is the questions pane. To submit a question, type it in the question box. These may be questions related to the presentation or technical questions related to the GoToWebinar system. You may also be asked by the presenter to type your ideas or responses here as part of an exercise during the webinar. Please send a quick note in your question pane now. Questions may be submitted at any time. These will be monitored, and we will try to respond quickly if we see something that shouldn't wait until the QA period, such as making a clarification. During the webinar, you may be asked to respond to a polling question or survey. Please take the time to participate, as your input and ideas are valuable to the group. Be sure to stay attentive and to interact as much as possible during this webinar. The quality of your experience depends on your attention and participation. Try to avoid the distraction of responding to email, checking Facebook, instant messaging, or working on other tasks at your computer. If you need to step away for a moment, do not close the GoToWebinar window, as you will be required to log in again if you wish to rejoin the session. If you experience problems with the audio, one possible solution is to use the conference call number and listen to the presentation using your phone. Click the Use Telephone option in the audio pane of your control panel to view the conference call number. The webinar is being recorded, and the online archive will be available to view on the CAPA website in approximately 2 weeks. Are there any questions? Before we begin the session, we would like to know something about our attendees. The question is, what chapter are you from or were you from? Please answer in the question panel. Thank you. And now I would like to hand over the virtual microphone to Dana Booth.
Marvelous.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dana. I forgot one thing. Can I just read your bio?
Sure.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Dana Booth is with over 25 years of experience in nonprofit leadership and fundraising. Dana Booth's career has led to opportunities with education and arts institutions, large and small, in the Northeast and Midwest. Dana comes to a role leading the fundraising and alumni relations team at Columbus School for Girls as Chief Development Officer following nearly 17 years at The Ohio State University. At Ohio State, she served as Assistant Vice President. Dana also served as Director of Development in the College of Arts and Sciences and in the offices of Corporate and Foundation Giving and President's Cup. Dana holds a BS in Public Relations from the S.I. Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University and an M.A. in Public Policy and Management from the Fisher College of Business at Ohio State. She is a certified business etiquette specialist. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction. And I want to say good evening and welcome and thank you to everyone who was online with us. I so appreciate your attention and your decision to give some time this evening to what I think is a really important, and I hope what you'll think is a really fun topic. So I was sorry I can't see on my screen which chapters you're representing, but I am Beta Tau from Syracuse and had such a wonderful experience in my college years and wish I had some of this information that we'll be discussing this evening a little closer to my graduation. I think I probably could have avoided some potential faux pas or felt more comfortable as I left school and made my way into the business world. So I'm pleased to share some of this with you, and let's just get started. So this evening we are not going to speak about how to pour tea. Pouring tea is absolutely an important thing, but that is not what we're here to discuss. We're here sort of to discuss manners, but manners really, as we are growing up, they are basic standards that we're taught as children and young adults. Oftentimes our parents and our family share with us what's important about how to meet new people. That moves into our school experience, becoming part of a group, becoming part of a team, and how you manage yourself in those situations. And then as we continue through our lives and our careers, it's talking about how we should move around our community, how to meet people, how to become a contributing member of the societies in which we live. Manners and etiquette are not about being snobby. As you see in this cartoon, it's not about finding the places where people are maybe not behaving in the way that we feel they should be or what the book says we should do and pointing them out. Sometimes it's just us understanding how we can help smooth over the situation. So in this situation with this gentleman who is calling out the errors in the menu, we would probably make light of it and make sure that waiter felt more comfortable after that situation. It is not about being a snob. It's also not something that's outdated. I think oftentimes we think about etiquette as something that maybe our grandmothers were much more focused on than we need to be. But really, etiquette is timeless. Etiquette is about making others feel comfortable in whatever situation we are in. I think in the business world, it gives you a competitive edge. People can see when you are taking the time to focus on your behavior and focus on how other people are experiencing a situation. And in many cases, it can make you memorable for the right reasons. How you react in a situation where someone is possibly uncomfortable or is looking to someone for guidance. If you're the one who can give the guidance or provide the comfort, become memorable for the right reasons. In addition, etiquette is really the simple and basically understandable language of mutual respect. We want others to feel comfortable around us. So let's jump in. This evening we're going to talk about three specific sections. We're going to speak of social event basics, then we're going to cover some very high-level dining tips, and then some general good practices for modern situations. And in between each section, we will take time for questions, and I will let you know when we've hit at the end of each section. So we'll begin with events. So many of us have events either for work or for social situations, and really how we arrive at those events will make all the difference with how the event will play out for us on a variety of levels. So first of all, MapQuest and Google Maps or whatever your favorite program on your phone, those things are your friends. one of the best and most important things you can do is before you leave your home or your office, have a sense of where you're going. Make sure you time your travel, time your arrival, so that you get to where you're arriving on time. You want to make sure that you understand if there's traffic, if there's some kind of construction, have a sense of what's going on in the area. If you feel that there's a risk of being late, make sure you leave an extra, 15 or 20 minutes early. You can always go sit in a McDonald's parking lot. There's nothing or somewhere close by where you will feel safe and you can see your destination but not be sitting out in the parking lot. That is absolutely done all the time. You probably see people in their cars on their phone. Oftentimes they're ahead of time for an appointment so as not to risk being late. If it's a social event, you want to arrive 10 to 15 minutes after the start of the party. It's always best to give your hostess those extra few moments. If the party's from 6 to 8, you want to arrive a little after 6 because sometimes he or she is harried trying to get those last minute details ready. If you arrive just a skosh after the start time, you are right on time. For a business meeting, I would suggest that you're there at least 5 minutes ahead of time. Some people will arrive closer to 15 minutes. I think that's verging on a little bit too early, but if you're sitting outside in your car at that point, you can feel safe that you're there on time, and you can head in 5 to 10 minutes early. Once you arrive, that good friend, your cell phone, is turned off and tucked away. So once you have arrived at your event, one of the most important things, again, you're on time. Now you want to enter that room with confidence. People watch who's coming in the door, and you will be noticed as you enter the room, and they will notice you if you enter with confidence and want to know who you are. They'll want to know your story. That's the best situation for you to be in either a social or a business situation. If you have, if there are name tags at this event, use that time in line to network. The person standing in front of you or the person standing behind you could be someone you've never met and could be a wonderful person for you to connect with. Oftentimes, that line can drag, especially if everyone's arriving at the same time, and you've made a new friend, and it gives you someone to look for later, especially if you're at an event where you don't know many people. You could meet a new friend in the name tag line. Once you've received your name tag, this is something that people ask me all the time. Which side do I put my name tag on? Here's the easiest way to remember. What are the things that go over our heart? I know of one thing that we all have in common that is so important. Kappa key goes over our heart. And if we have a Kappa key on, which we probably don't at our business event and probably most social events once we've graduated, unless it was a Kappa event, we may not be wearing our key, but it's always sort of there. Remember that because your name tag always goes on the other side, on the right side. And what that does is it enables you to, as you're greeting someone you don't know, when you shake hands, your eyes will go down to their right side and that name tag, and it allows you to say their name and look in their eyes in a seamless motion. And that's something you have to practice, and it's something you have to remember, but it makes an enormous difference. And it will also allow you to see someone who you think you should know, but you don't quite remember their name. If their name tag's on the right side, it's much easier to say, "Oh, Susan, it's great to see you," without having to move your eyes very significantly. When the name tag's on the left side, it's a further distance from the left side name tag to their eyes. You have to practice that one, but it's true. You will see. Once you have your name tag, one of the most important things to do is to seek out and greet your host or the speaker. And I say that because, first of all, of course, we want to greet our host or hostess and graciously thank them for including us. And I mention the speaker because there are so many times that a speaker arrives, the host or hostess gets them settled, and they're sort of just kind of lost. They're waiting in the front of the room for the event to start, and they often know no one. So if you make that effort of going up and saying, "Hello, my name's Dana Booth. I'm so pleased. I've been so looking forward to hearing you speak this evening. Thank you for coming," they will start a conversation with you, and very possibly they will look for you in the room that evening or at that event, and it brings them some comfort of someone that they sort of know. So you've set yourself apart as someone who is trying to make the speaker feel comfortable in a place where they may not know people. Now, obviously, if they're preparing for their speech, you don't want to interrupt them, but you can tell most speakers get to the room and they're ready. During your course of entering the room, obviously there are often handshakes. And the most important things about a handshake you have probably learned: firm handshake with a smile, and make sure you make eye contact, direct eye contact, not too long so as to be creepy, but just long enough to show that you authentically are pleased to see or meet the person with whom you're shaking hands. Introductions can be a difficult thing for many people. It's awkward, or it can be if you decide you're uncertain about how to handle them. So the best thing to remember: always introduce yourself, and introduce yourself with both your first and your last name. Even if you know someone pretty well, but they're not your good friend or your colleague, even if it's a work acquaintance, always smart to introduce yourself with your first and last name, just to remind them who you are, again, to make them feel comfortable. Speak slowly, and in many cases, you may want to include either your employer or some context. So, hi, Dana Booth, Columbus School for Girls. We met last week at that luncheon. That's really, really helpful for someone so that they know who you are, and or you can jog their memory. If you have the opportunity to introduce two people to each other, ideally you want to find the person either who is the most senior or in the most respected position, or the person who you know have known the longest, and introduce the person that you know to the other person. So it would be, I'll just say, as if I was to introduce my grandmother to my friend, I would say, Sue Smith, my grandmother, I'd like you to meet Fred Jones. And then they would shake hands and meet each other. But you always take the senior most or most important person to introduce to the other. You never shorten anyone's name. So if you see on their name tag Susan, you want to introduce the person as Susan, or you want to greet the person as Susan and not shorten it to Sue. Not everyone does shorten their name. And there are times where those name tags will be produced from a database and they'll be incorrect. However, unless the person tells you to shorten the name, go with what's on the name tag. And if you really can't remember someone's name, just acknowledge it and ask politely. We've all been there. And I think someone would feel much better having you say, I'm sorry, we've met 6 times and I have forgotten your name. And then you say, I will not forget that now, and find a way to implant that in your brain so that the next time you see them, it's not an issue. Once you're in the room and you've made your introductions and you have your name tag on, one of the next important things is to mingle, mingle, mingle. Be the Lone Ranger. If you have a group of friends, don't move in a group. Challenge yourselves to break out, go individually to different sides of the room, meet different people, and then see if you can actually introduce each other to someone new. That is an absolutely wonderful thing to do. It is how you really maximize the use of either a social or a business event. It's really, really tempting to hang out with your friends. It's really, really tempting when you're at a work event that you're working for your organization or your company to hang out with the colleagues you know the best. That's not going to break you out of your box. That's not necessarily going to introduce you to people you don't know. That's not going to make you remembered. You're going to look like one of the wallflowers who was hanging out with their friends. You're going to miss something. So as tempting as it is, try to break free of that. And it takes some practice, definitely. So at this point, we have just a quick quiz, and that is, given that you are of legal drinking age, and that is something that you choose to do, how many social drinks are appropriate at a business reception versus a social event?
Hi everyone, I'm going to launch this poll. So, how many drinks are acceptable at a business reception versus a social event? 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4? 5 more seconds if you want to vote. Excellent. Our poll results were 26% 0, 52% 1, 22% 2. And back to you, Dana.
Very good. Actually, all of those can be right. So it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and alcohol or a drink is absolutely okay at an event, as long as it's something you choose to do. In general, one glass of wine or one glass of something, a drink, at the reception is appropriate, and one glass at dinner is appropriate. And it doesn't mean you have to guzzle them, each one. To have one at each occurrence is perfectly acceptable as long as you choose to have that. Oftentimes people will stick with wine or even a wine spritzer, and if they choose not to drink, club soda and lime has the appearance of a cocktail, and you're not trying to fake anybody into thinking that you're drinking, but it just eliminates that question. Don't have any idea what you're drinking, and it doesn't really matter. And it's a comfort thing. Also important to remember, no drink is absolutely acceptable as well. It's a personal choice. You can have a Diet Coke, you can have a glass of water. The nice thing about the soda and lime, again, is that it looks bubbly and it just looks festive. Critical thing, you only request a drink from what is being served. So oftentimes at a reception, it's wine and beer or some kind of sparkling water, or it's full bar. I would say if it's full bar, stick with the wine because it has an impression. It feels a little more grown up and a little less cocktaily. It's something that everyone can appreciate, and you don't have to drink the whole drink to feel as though you're making something if you half of it. Another thing to remember, often reception with those cocktails, navigating the plate, the reception, and the napkins and the glass, it really, really can be a dance. About as you head up to that buffet table and want some of those little yummy treats, but whether you can actually greet someone new, hold your glass of wine or your drink, and your plate, and your napkin. If you can manage that well, then go ahead and have something. If you can't, don't worry about it. You're going to have a meal later.
Dana,
It won't be. Yes.
your audio is getting kind of garbled. Is it possible for you to perhaps talking closer to your computer? We'll try that first, and if not, we'll try to have you
Sure.
log off, then log back in. I think you're just leaning back, and so the mic's not picking you up as well.
Oh, my apologies. See if this is better. Is that clearer?
You already sound better.
Okay.
If Margaret and Kendall could tell me if Dana sounds better, that'd be great. Thank you.
Are we good here?
Yeah, I would continue.
Okay, so once the indication has been made that the reception part of your event is over, if you have a fresh glass, a fresh cocktail, or if you've just arrived and you have a glass of wine, feel free to take that into the room with you if you're moving into a dinner session. If you've been holding your glass for a while, there are generally a tray outside of a banquet room door for you to place your older cocktail or your older drink. Go ahead and leave that drink on that tray because you will be served something new when you go into the dinner room. Perfectly acceptable even if you have something left in your glass, unless it's absolutely fresh, you've just arrived from the bar with it. Really critical when you are at an event and someone says, please take your seat for dinner, do them a big favor and take your seat for dinner the first time they ask. So many of these events are difficult to get people to move. You know, it's like herding cats. You've seen those situations where people just will not move into a room. Be the one who helps move in when people are asking. Once you're seated, please sit where, if you have a place card or if you've been given an assignment, please sit where the host has suggested. Someone has taken the time to plan the table. You don't want to be the one who's moving your place card to sit by a friend when there was a reason why you were seated where the place card is. As you take your seat from the left side. If you're at a table that is hosted, So if it's a smaller event and there's a host or a hostess, you wait for that person to take a seat and then you're seated. If you're at a large banquet where many people are coming in, people are not sitting, feel free to go ahead and take a seat. You can serve as a de facto host, and others will then feel comfortable sitting because you've done so. And if there's nothing wrong with a gentleman waiting for a woman to take a seat, but it's not critical for them to wait. It's just sort of a nicety. You would remove and place your napkin after the host does if you're at a hosted table. And again, if you're at one of the napkin on the plate for a really long time until someone finally removes the napkin and puts it on their lap and the whole table follows suit, feel free to be that person. Feel free to give your group the okay to remove their napkin if there's not a host there. Remove the napkin, place it with its fold toward you on your lap. And you do not shake or snap that napkin when you do so. So a quick quiz, where do you place your napkin when you leave the table?
The options are to the right of the plate, to the left of the plate, on the chair, on the back of the chair. Okay, the results are 10% say to the right of the plate, 24% to the left of the plate, and 67% say on the chair.
So that is about what I would expect, and I think all of those are places where people do and can leave a napkin. Generally speaking, we say leave to the right of the plate because that means you're going to return. Now, not every wait staff person knows that that's what that means. So folding the napkin, making it as small as possible, and leaving it so it doesn't touch any items on your plate is the first choice. The reason that we do not put the napkin on the chair is that as we are a global, much more global society, there are some cultures that actually find that offensive because they feel as though you should not put something that you would put up to your face on the chair where your rear end sits. So that's just something that I had never really thought of until someone had shared it with me, and I thought, oh, that makes sense. There are plenty of places, even in a tight banquet setup, that you can fold your napkin as small, the long way, as long and sort of narrow as possible, and put it next to the right of your plate. But in that case, you do the best you can. So once you're seated, things to remember, always 2 feet on the floor. I'm one of those people who's very tempted when I'm sitting at my desk at work. I sit on one foot, my foot falls asleep. It's time to get up. I have to walk somewhere. I have a foot that's asleep. And that's not something you want to have happen at a social event, nor is it really a very nice way to be seated. You want to sit with 1 to 2 hands distance from your body and the table so that you're not sitting right on top of the table, but you're sitting close enough to the table to be involved in the conversation. No personal items go on the table. No cell phones, no purses, no lipstick. Nothing goes on the table. The table has enough things just for the meal service. Handbags and a briefcase go on the floor. Clean your feet. So I don't know if any of you are in urban areas. You definitely know that you want to keep those items close. I've actually lived in places where I watched somebody use an umbrella to scoot someone's handbag from underneath their chair. It wasn't quite under their feet, so they didn't have it secured. Most critical thing is you never hang a handbag on the back of a chair. First of all, it's a safety and security issue. Second of all, it makes meal service difficult. It's the kind of thing that slides off your chair, and then your wait staff has to manage that, and it's something you have to worry about. If you have business materials because you're at a business lunch, or if you have come to an event and there's a program or a gift bag or something that's been left for you on your table, those may go on the floor under your chair. So this is a fun quiz. This is one that I think is It's something that really I had to think of outside the box with, and I'm curious to see where you will land. Where do you place your hands while you're at the table? So you're not in the active eating. Where do you place your hands?
Okay, the options are on my lap, wrists on the edge of the table, arms on the table, up to the table, and elbows on the table. 5 more seconds. The results are 50% on my lap, 42% wrists on the edge of the table, 8% arms on the table up to the table.
Okay, so if you tell my grandmother and maybe my mother I said this, I will have to educate them about it. We were taught to put our hands in our lap when we're not using them at the table. But again, going back to that whole global society and understanding that the world is changing, the new thought is that when you're seated at a dinner table and not actively eating, you have your wrists placed on the edge of the table. And the reason that you do that is there are a couple things. One, there are some people who say it is improper to have your hands in your lap where they can't be seen, because there are some cultures that will say, I want to know what you're doing with your hands. Can't see them. I'd like to know what you're doing with your hands. The other thing is, when you have your wrists on the table, and you'll have to practice this, it forces your body to pitch forward. And what that does is it makes you more present at the table. It helps bring you into the conversation. Putting your hands in your lap forces your body backwards, and it changes your body language. Putting your wrists on the edge of the table brings you into just, that's the way I can say it, is it makes you present. Just keeps you engaged in the activity of the table, and it will change your experience at the dinner table. So it's definitely different than what many of us taught as children, but it's changing global society. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this photo because I'm sure you have seen this multiple times. The thing to remember, when you are at an event where you sit down at a table and every fork and every knife and every glass you have ever seen in your life is there, important things to remember: BMW, bread, main dish, water. That is how your place is set. So bread to the left, main dish in front, water glass up to the right. Use your forks from the outside in. You will be fine. The most important thing when you're seated at dinner, make sure you have lots of good table conversation. You want to be the person that everyone wants to talk to. Oftentimes, there are people at these events who feel uncomfortable talking. You can be the one to put some topics out and get the conversation going. Just be sure that you do not press taboo topics that we have all been taught: age, wealth, family arguments, medical issues, love affairs, disgrace. They're all things we don't need to discuss at the dinner table. There are plenty of interesting things to talk about. And if you know you're going to a business event, it's not a bad idea to prep before you go. Take a look at the headlines that are key in your industry. Take a look at the things that are non-controversial in the headlines. Have them teed up so that if there is a quiet time, you're ready to pull one of those topics out and start a good conversation. Some quick mealtime tips. Passing. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need. All of the items are placed on the table for your use. Sometimes they're not in front of you. Please ask the person where the item is located, pass it to you. If it's located in front of you and you're getting ready, you have rolls and you'd like to move them around the table, offer them to the person to the left of you and then pass them to the right. someone has asked you for the salt, make sure you move the salt and pepper. As I've been taught, salt and pepper are married and they move together. So there you go, move the salt and pepper together. And if possible, if the table is not so tightly set, not spaced, try to place items that you're passing on the table between people. Because you may be holding a boat full of dressing and handing it to someone sitting next to you, and you don't realize that maybe their grip is compromised, maybe they have carpal tunnel, or maybe the plate is slippery. Better for them to be able to pick it up, get a grip on it, and move it than you to assume that they can take it from you. Sometimes it's not possible because there's just not space on the table. But when you can, please try to do that. It's just easier for the person sitting next to you. And if you see something near you that you think should be moving, just move it. You may not need sweetener for your coffee or your iced tea, but somebody at the table will. So go ahead and move that along. Remember that bread and crackers, they're not really a course. We tend to sit down at a table. If the bread basket's there, we take that bread and we dive in. It's supposed to be there to go with salad. The way that you can avoid that, do, but it's become common practice to just bow on that delicious rolls right when they sit down. And I think sometimes nervousness, getting that meal started, but it's really bread and crackers, not really a course, really a compliment. 1 pat of butter is plenty. And you know to butter one piece of your roll and eat it individually as opposed to butter the whole roll and eat your roll with bites. You want to rip off one piece, butter that, and eat it. Remember, you have a bread plate if there is one there for you. There may not be, and if there isn't, use whatever main plate has been given to you. Please don't eat until everyone is served. And then once you are served, eat what you wish and let others do the same. Someone next to you may not be eating at all. It's not your business why they're not eating. You don't need to worry about them. They will take care of themselves. Leave them to do their thing and you do your thing. And if you're served something that you just don't like, remember, it's not your last meal. There is a fast food restaurant down the street. You have leftovers in your refrigerator at home. Find a way to move some around. Find something on the plate that you can eat. But remember, it's not your last meal. So important to know ahead of time dietary preferences versus personal preferences. If you have an allergy, if you're allergic to seafood, if you have celiac or you're gluten-free, those are things that you can share ahead of time with a host or at an event, or if you're vegetarian or a vegan. Those are things that many facilities and many hosts want to know. If you happen to be on the Atkins diet, or if you have some other personal preference, those are things that you will need to accommodate yourself. Those are not things that you necessarily need to obligate your host to accommodate for you. So keep those things in mind. If you're served something and you don't know what to do with it, watch your host. What would my host do? Watch your host. And if there's no host at the table, you're not 100% sure what to do and you're willing to figure it out, people will look to you. So figure it out. Do so in a way that is appropriate, that is quiet, and people watch you and appreciate you trying to figure out how to eat whatever the item is. There's probably someone at the table who will know, so look around if you don't have a host. Remember, the ice in your glass of water or tea is not part of the meal. There's no need to crunch that ice like it's a delicious part of your dinner or your lunch. And coffee is actually an after-dinner drink. It's not something that you should request during your meal. Sometimes at a banquet they'll serve it during the meal because if they don't serve it then, you won't get it at all. They're anticipating a speaker coming. They want to get that coffee placed so that you can eat a dessert that might already be on your table. If they come around and offer the coffee, you can take it, but don't ask for coffee earlier than it's until after your meal. So our next quiz, what do I do with my service items when I'm done with my meal? How do I indicate that my meal is complete?
The options are stack my dishes, put my dish away from my plate, place my cutlery at 420, place my cutlery in an X. And our results are 5% push my dish away from my place, 82% place my cutlery at 420, and 14% place my cutlery in an X.
Oh, you guys are pros. You're right, 420. So putting your knife and your fork in a position that's actually on a clock at 420 time, that indicates to your server that your meal is done. That what that does is it allows your server to remove those items from your place without getting their hands on your cutlery that you've already used, but they could use their thumb to hold either that knife or that fork down. You would want to put the knife first, but if you don't, it at least allows the server to remove it and make sure that those don't fall into your lap, which I think we've all probably seen happen. So you're all very smart. Good job. So here are a couple items, things you might find that you have issues with during a meal. A foreign object in your mouth. So there's an olive that you've eaten and it happens to have a pit. How do you remove that pit? You remove a foreign item the way it went in. If you ate the olive with a fork, you remove it on a fork. If you ate it with your hands, you remove it with your hands. Food stuck in your teeth. How do you remove that? Have a drink of water. If you can loosen that piece, you do it that, and you can do that without making a big face at the table, do so. If not, excuse yourself and go to the ladies' room and get the item out of your teeth away from the table. If you used your neighbor's fork, if you drank your neighbor's water, or if you dropped your fork or your napkin, those are all things that your server should be able to help you with. You can replace the fork, you can replace the water, they can replace your fork or napkin. If your host suggests a beer with lunch and that's not something that's comfortable for you, you never need to acquiesce. You can say, thank you, boy, I'll just be asleep at my desk if I have that at lunch, or make some other comment that is appropriate and thanks them for the suggestion, but lets them know that's not something you care to do. If you look down and your plate is full and the waitstaff is clearing, it probably means during that meal you were speaking too much and not letting other people talk. You want to make sure that you're eating at the same pace as the people around you, and it's something that you would want to be aware of. Things that we absolutely do not want to do at the table. Speak with food in our mouth. Chew with our mouth open. Eat large bites. Push our dishes away or stack them when we're done. Wave our silverware when we're speaking. We know not to slouch or tilt in our chair, and if our wrists are on the table, we aren't doing that anyway. We don't season our food before trying it. We never answer our cell phone unless we know we have an emergency situation with a child, a babysitter, and then we might want to inform people that we have an issue so that that's something they're anticipating. We never want to groom ourselves in any manner at the table. And we don't do this either. We don't refuse a course at a hosted event. So if they come to serve you soup and you can't stand cream of tomato soup, you take the soup, you move the soup around with your spoon a little bit, have a brilliant conversation with your neighbors. They won't even care that you didn't eat. But if you don't accept the course, it looks like you didn't want to continue with the program or the plan or the beautiful menu that your host has picked out for you. You never order the most expensive item on the menu. If you've been invited out to lunch, find something at a moderate price range. You don't eat before your host eats. Try not to eat super quickly, which sometimes is a habit that we've gotten into and something we have to really carefully monitor. Don't blow on your soup or lick your knife. Never wipe your nose with your napkin. If you do need to blow your nose, excuse yourself and do so in the ladies' room. Don't clang and scrape our utensils. And as painful as it may be to wave goodbye to some beautiful meal that you have not had a chance to eat because you've been so engaged in a great conversation, we don't ask for to-go bags at a business event. It's sad, but not appropriate. How do we know when our time is done? Generally, it's our host or our hostess who will help us realize when the event is over. They will say, thank you so much for coming, or the event will will end, and we will know it's time to go. But that's really the end of our dining section. If there are any specific questions or things I might have missed, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, there's Margaret New had a couple of comments. Going back to times to arrive, she said that 10 to 15 minutes late for a social event is actually too late in Washington, DC. You want to be the first to arrive to get full attention.
I can absolutely see that, and certainly for just about everything that I have mentioned here, except some of the real basics, there may be some regional or there may be some cultural differences in different parts of the country or in different societies or in different social circles. So what you need to do in that case, I absolutely agree. Know your audience. If it's best for you to be there early or to be there right on time, know that. Time yourself, time your travel, and make sure you're there right at that time. There's a difference in going to someone's home and going to a venue. And it's important to know your host, and it's important to know your regional, the cues from your region. So I absolutely agree. You probably could find books or other advice that will be opposite some of the things I am saying. I have found that in my research on etiquette. What you need to do at the end of the day is determine what's right for you, determine what's right for your situation, and assess the crowd that you're with and the audience you're with. And again, how can you feel comfortable? How can you make others feel comfortable? That's our goal. Great question or comment.
She had one more comment, and that's to give a business card to a speaker. So if you go and talk to a speaker at an event, you can give them your business card. We have another.
That's a really great. Yep.
And then from Rachel Odster, when on a business dinner to a sushi restaurant, what is appropriate to order? For example, how many rolls of sushi?
That is a great question. And actually, I am not a sushi eater. So what I would do in a situation like that, if I knew I was going to a sushi restaurant, and because I am not a sushi eater, I would find out before I went. I would ask one of my colleagues and one of my friends for some advice on that. Or I would ask my host or hostess. I would ask them what they recommend, and I would ask them what they're ordering, because that will give me a sense. Your host or hostess will love to give you that advice. And if you're brave and if you love sushi, you can let them order for you. You can even say, what do you think is good here? And they will give you their advice.
I don't know if you want to leave this question until the end, but do you have any favorite books on etiquette?
I have several, but it depends on what you're looking for. So there are some that are more modern, and there are some that are more Miss Manners and Emily Post. They're very, very, very traditional, and I love that, and I think those are important things to know. But then even if you open up Amazon and you just put in etiquette, there are some wonderful different books depending on what elements of the world you're looking at. So I might suggest, I know what's important to me, but we all are in different situations in our lives, and I think it's important for you to take a look at the literature and see what looks most meaningful to you. They're not expensive. Most of them are paperback. You can actually, or even the library, you can go check things at the library and then purchase one that looks right for you. There's so much written on this topic, and they now cover the gamut of topics, from business to social to weddings to dining to international, and they all have a different bent depending on who the author is. I hope that's helpful.
Excellent. That's all the questions for now.
Okay. But we have a few more things to talk through, and some of these are just really good basics for us to remember. And I call this "my mom was right." These things matter. These things are important. These things will make a difference and make an impact. Always send thank you cards. No matter what, a good conversation, a great email, a good meeting, send a thank you note, card, a call. People will remember that. If you are somewhere and there are not enough seats, offer your seat to someone who is looking for a seat. It doesn't mean that they can't stand. It doesn't mean that they can't look elsewhere. But for you to offer your seat sets you apart. Hold the door or be the first person in a revolving door. Those are things that you can do to respect the person behind you or next to you, And again, set yourself apart. Make sure you use the word may instead of can. You know you can, but may is, may I please, as opposed to can I. This sounds a lot better. If you're being asked to respond for an event, respond by the deadline. Do respond, and do respond by the deadline. And if you respond that you're planning to attend, make sure that you're there. There's nothing worse than planning an event and having people who actually bother to tell that they would attend not show up. It's very, very disruptive to a host. Make sure that you make good eye contact when people call you, return their phone calls. When you're at an event and you're with people, and actually not even just at an event, in the world, connect people. So if you're having a conversation with someone and they indicate an interest in an area that you have a friend who's an expert or someone who has a similar interest, make a connection. You will be remembered as the person who connected them, and that could be an incredible relationship that they will then take, and great things will happen because you actually thought of those two people and you took the effort of bringing them together. Here are some things that people often wonder. So if you're invited to a dinner party, may you bring a guest? And the answer to that is, it depends. It depends on the dinner party. It depends on the host. If you're invited to bring a guest, please feel free to bring a guest. If you have a significant other or if you have someone visiting from out of town, if you know your host or hostess well, you can absolutely make a call and see if that's appropriate. But again, that's another, you have to know the situation well enough. If you feel comfortable making that call, make the call. Your host or hostess will tell you if they can accommodate a guest. What do you do if your dining companion leaves a really skimpy tip? I think we've all been in this situation. The easiest thing to do is either leave an additional amount of money on the table from what your dining companion leaves, and you can say, oh, I waited tables back in the day and I'm just an over tipper, and just do it. Don't worry about it. But remember that the service workers work really hard for us, and if you can help make their lives better because they provided good service, feel free to do so. Sneezing or coughing at a meal or a cocktail party. So one of those wonderful etiquette books, and I can't remember now if it's Miss Manners or Emily Post. It might be Emily Post, says, whatever you do, you sneeze or if you're caught at a meal and you're stuck at a table and you feel the urge of a sneeze or a cough coming, you sneeze or cough away in the direction opposite of the Queen of England. So if you're seated next to the Queen of England, you don't cough or sneeze in her direction. If you're not sitting next to the Queen of England, the sense is that you sneeze or cough in the direction away from the person that you know the best. So in other words, obviously, we want to be very, very careful about sneezing and coughing and spreading germs, and we all know how to do that correctly. You want to make it as least offensive as possible. There's no way that you can anticipate that. Make it as far away from the table and do it in the direction you know least. I know that sounds crazy, but we've all been taught good hygiene. Just do your best to stay away from anyone, but, lean in the direction of the person you don't know. If you're at the theater and someone in your row arrives late, do you sit or do you stand? If the performance has not started, you may stand. If the performance has started, you may sit and lean your knees, depending on which aisle you're on, either to the right or to the left, depending on where you're seated. And if you're the late arriver, which you shouldn't be because you've Googled it and you know how long it's going to take you to get there and park, you would enter the row facing the people who are seated. All right, so where or when is it appropriate to check your cell phone at an event? Generally, that phone has gone away. We are not checking our cell phone. The only appropriate place to check your cell phone at an event is out of the way from the crowd. So if you have a reason that you need to check your phone, excuse yourself. You don't need to say, I need to go check my phone. Excuse yourself, go out in the hall and away from the room and check your phone. But our society has made it okay to look at that phone. And you've, I'm sure, walked into rooms where people are on their phone and it just doesn't look good. Don't be the person who's on their phone the entire time that they're out. So a few more manners items. that really are modern. They're things that are new. They're things that our parents and grandparents never anticipated. Earbuds. Always remove your earbuds when you're having a conversation. If you're walking down the street and you happen to have your earphones in, somebody stops you, you can hear them, take the earbuds out. It shows that you are interested enough in them to have that conversation. If you're on the phone while you're at the store and you're ready to check out, stop that phone conversation while you're checking out. Cashier does not want to hear the conversation, and it's really rude not to give them your full attention. They're giving you their full attention. The least you can do is respect them and give that attention. It's a habit. Some people don't even realize they're doing it. Think about that. When you're at the gym, make sure you wipe down your machine. We've walked behind people who have not done it, and it's not something that is appropriate. We don't want to get on that machine after someone has been really sweaty. They give you towels to do that. Make sure that you take care of yourself and take care of the equipment. As we've said, be kind to restaurant and retail staff. Tip well, give them your full attention. Realize that oftentimes there are problems that are not your server, it's the restaurant. Think about that before you leave a small tip or complain. But if you're not getting good service, it's appropriate to complain. Just do it appropriately, not screaming and yelling at a person. Find out what's happening. Find a manager if you need to. When you're passing people on a sidewalk or standing on the escalator, move to the right. And if you're grocery shopping or somewhere where there's a cart, make sure you return your cart either to the store or to the cart corral, because it will eventually damage someone's car if the wind blows. You don't want that cart in your car. You don't need that cart going into someone else's car either. Just take the extra step and move it where it belongs. We all know, don't clip your nails in public. Don't blow your nose at the dinner table. We've said that before. Never ask a woman when she is due. We all have heard stories of people asking someone when their baby's due and they're not expecting. And that is, there's nothing more awkward. So don't do it. Let them share their wonderful news with you, and then you can have that conversation. If you say to a friend that you'll meet them in 10 minutes, you really mean 25 minutes, tell them that. Don't wait. Don't leave your friends waiting for you. It's a safety thing. It's a respect thing. Just be realistic about your time. Try not to say no problem when you really should be saying you're welcome. So if someone says, hey, thanks so much for doing that for me, you say no problem. Really think about saying you're welcome. That's a nice way to end that phrase. Finally, don't become so obsessed with manners that you're no longer any fun to be around. Really, the joy of having good manners or practicing good etiquette is, as we said at the beginning, to make people feel comfortable. It's understanding, it's taking a look at our community, it's taking a look at the people around us, and helping them be comfortable in the environment that we all live in. It's a small world. We don't all have all of the information, but what we have is a human, natural desire to make people feel comfortable, to have pleasant experience wherever we are. People will notice if you go out of your way to make them comfortable. That is ultimately the definition of good manners. That wraps up our presentation as we get close to the end of our time. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that are still lingering.
Hi, Dana. I think we're good on questions now. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation and taking us through the intricacies of business etiquette. And thank you to all the attendees for presenting today. Dana, do you mind if attendees were to email you if they have any questions on the topic?
I would be more than happy to have that.
So
Absolutely.
what is your email address?
So it's Dana, Dana, B as in boy, Mac, M-A-C, Dana B Mac at gmail.com.
Okay, and I've put that in the chat window for everyone. Just one second. There we go. So if you have any questions, you can contact Dana directly. If you would like to be more involved, attendees, in oh, we do have a question. Can you print the slides from the presentation? I guess if people sent you an email, you could send them the slides.
I'd be more than happy to do that.
Okay, wonderful. Um, if you would like to be more involved in Kappa's virtual training and webinar programs, we would love to have you on our producer team. Please contact the Education Department at KKG headquarters for details. The benefits are excellent, including the opportunity to support Kappa's webinar program and a front row seat at a great presentation. As we close the webinar, a survey will open on your screen. You will be prompted to respond to a few evaluation questions. Please take a moment to share your thoughts on today's webinar. Your feedback will help us shape future webinar training events. If you have any questions or comments whatsoever, please send an email to education@kkg.org. So as we say goodnight, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and hope to see you again at another webinar.